Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, plunge in headfirst, and surface with the essential insights.
Mhm.
Today, we're diving into a really fascinating YouTube excerpt. It features a speaker, Dr. Vikas Divyakirti, sharing his perspective on Jainism.
And specifically focusing on one particular practice that he finds, well, profoundly impactful.
That's right. So, our mission here for this deep dive is to unpack Dr. Divyakirti's unique take on this aspect of Jainism.
Yeah, understand why it resonated so much with him personally, and crucially, figure out what valuable nuggets of wisdom you, listening, can maybe extract from his perspective.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The first thing that stands out is Dr. Divyakirti himself. He makes it clear he's not from the Jain community.
Right, which is an important lens. He mentions attending an event and, well, initially being a bit unfamiliar with some customs.
Like specific mantras, he says.
Yeah.
Though he mentions he picked up on things like removing shoes pretty quickly.
Yeah, the basics.
Yeah,
But despite that initial, maybe slight unfamiliarity, Jainism clearly became a huge interest for him.
definitely. He shares this great story about his academic background, preparing for the UPSC exam.
With philosophy as his optional subject. And he
Uh,
says after studying all these different philosophies, he made a really objective decision.
which was?
Jain philosophy was his absolute favorite Indian philosophy. Full stop.
Wow. And he was apparently ready to state that in an interview
Yeah.
should the question arise.
Exactly. He was that convinced, even though, as it turns out, they never actually asked him that specific question.
Still, that level of commitment,
Yeah.
studying it so deeply to declare it his favorite, especially coming from outside the community, that says a lot.
It really does. It shows a deep intellectual connection, maybe an emotional one, too.
So in this specific talk we're looking at, he's addressing the JITO group, or family, thanking them for the invite.
Right. And he kind of sets the stage, mentioning he's a teacher, used to speaking for like hours on end.
So a 1-hour slot isn't a challenge because he's short on things to say.
Quite the opposite. It's a challenge because he has to condense so much material he's passionate about.
He's clearly got a lot stored up. He even says he specifically requested to talk about Jain philosophy.
Yeah, offered to go for 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours because it's just such a favorite subject for him. Things like Syadvada, Anekantavada,
Panchvrad, Mahavrad, Anuvrad.
and the ones he really zeroes in on for this discussion, Paryushan and Kshama Vani.
Kshama Vani. That's Forgiveness Day, right?
Exactly. And this seems to be where his perspective really crystallizes. He mentions writing about it years ago, like 10 years back on Facebook.
But the statement that really jumps out is, well, it's quite powerful. He says if he were tasked with creating a sort of combined religion,
Pulling the best bits from all world religions.
Kshama Vani from Jainism would definitely make the cut. It would be in there.
That's quite an endorsement, isn't it? Especially from someone who, approached it academically first.
So why? What makes it so significant for him?
Well, what's interesting is how he frames it. It's not just spiritual, it's deeply practical. Especially, he argues, for today's world.
No.
He points out that we're all rushing around, right? Busy lives. And in that rush, we inevitably, often completely unknowingly, say or do things that might hurt people.
Yeah, people close to us, friends, family. And it's not always about malice, is it?
Not at all. Your intention might be perfectly fine, maybe even good. But you just can't control how someone else interprets your words or actions in their specific context at that specific moment.
That makes sense. We've all been there, I think.
And he highlights what he sees as a crucial problem that arises from this. Often, someone is actually upset with us.
But we have no clue. We're totally unaware.
Exactly. And they might not say anything, maybe because of their own pride or self-respect, or, it just feels awkward to bring it up.
So this disconnect exists,
Mm-hmm.
an unspoken hurt.
Precisely. And this is where the beauty, as he sees it, of Kshama Vani, and particularly the practice of saying Michhami Dukkadam, comes into play.
Ah, yes, he tells that story about getting the message himself.
Right. About 10 years ago, a Jain friend sends him Michhami Dukkadam, and he's just confused.
Thinks it's a typo.
Yeah, or some kind of mistake. Didn't understand it at all. So his friend had to explain
And the explanation was,
that it means asking for forgiveness for any mistake or error, known or unknown, that might have happened over the past year.
okay, that's the key part, the preemptive nature.
That's the aha moment, I think he calls it. It's asking for forgiveness proactively for stuff you might not even remember doing.
Or stuff you genuinely aren't aware caused hurt.
Or even, and this is important, even if you don't think you made a mistake, you humbly acknowledge the possibility that something you did landed wrong.
So it's like a A blanket request covering the whole year for any unintended consequences.
Exactly. He finds that incredibly beautiful, and he talks about how it functions at a community level.
He calls it a beautiful festival for, what was it, keeping relationships intact.
Yeah. Think about that. A designated time, a cultural practice designed to clear the air. Not just for the big, obvious fights, but for all those little, invisible, maybe unintentional hurts that can build up.
It leads him to ask that, well, that really powerful question.
Which is?
If everyone had this kind of humility, this vinamra attitude, this willingness to seek forgiveness first, what would there even be left to fight about?
It's a profound thought, isn't it? And he doesn't stop there. He scales it up.
Right, he speculates about what could happen if this wasn't just personal, but like universal.
He imagines applying it between nations. He uses the example, hypothetically, of course, of Pakistan saying Michhami Dukkadam to India.
Suggesting something like that could potentially resolve huge, long-standing problems.
It's a thought experiment, obviously, but it really underlines the immense transformative potential he sees in this act, this simple but profound act of humility.
Okay, so let's try and distill this. From Dr. Divyakirti's perspective, what do we learn from this deep dive into Kshama Vani?
Well, we've seen how this practice, especially saying Michhami Dukkadam, isn't just a religious ritual. He presents it as a remarkably potent tool.
A tool for maintaining relationships, for healing them.
Exactly, both. The core insight, I think, is the power of proactive and maybe unconditional humility in how we relate to each other.
It shifts things, doesn't it? It moves beyond waiting for a fight to happen and then saying sorry.
To actively acknowledging up front that, hey, we're all fallible, we interact, things happen, and sometimes we might cause hurt without meaning to.
So it challenges us to think about the unseen impact, even when we thought we were doing okay or our intentions were good.
And to maybe prioritize the health of the relationship itself over, say, our own pride or our need to be right about what happened.
Which brings us to the end of this dive. It leaves us, and you listening, with something to chew on, I think.
Definitely. A question to consider. How might things change in your own key relationships, your closest ones?
If, even without a specific Forgiveness Day prompt, you adopted a similar stance. If you were to humbly acknowledge, maybe just once a year or even just internally,
The possibility that you might have, perhaps unknowingly, caused some hurt over the past year, how might that kind of proactive humility shift the dynamic?
something to reflect on.